Right. Well, we are back, gentlemen,
Yeah.
after the massive success of, episode two, I would say, but the episode one of it being called REKT Vision, and quite a week. I think you can probably throw out a lot of the stuff we spoke about last week. Things have really, really changed over the last week.
Your microphone's not very good, by the way.
Is it not? Unfortunately, I'm traveling. I asked before I came. Can you guys hear me, or is it okay?
Maybe if you move the piece a bit closer to your mouth, it might be a bit better.
What about now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. I'm pleased that we've got the REKT Vision branding now. We are officially REKT Vision.
We're 2 for 2 now with audio issues in the first few seconds of the show.
I literally asked this question before we went live, and I was told it was absolutely fine. So I really apologize if that's gone badly. But anyway, we'll get straight into things because it's been a wild week, and we only have you for 30 minutes, Raoul. I know, so we can maybe cover some of the other stuff after that. But the big news is that we've seemingly had a complete 180 in US regulation towards crypto. Firstly, you had the FIT21 bill, which seemingly passed through Congress, and now looks like the US is not going to veto it. And then around the same time, you had some murmurings that the ETH ETF was going to happen, which up until that point, both Polymarket and Bloomberg were putting the chances of it below, well, around 25% or lower. And that was a complete reversal of, I think, what people thought. The murmurings coming out of Washington at the time was that this wasn't going to happen. And now, I believe 8 different ETFs were approved, at least the 19 4Bs. And we are now heading to a ETH ETF, probably trading in July or June. Seems the most likely timing. So, what did you make of this? Because this, I think, caught a lot of people off guard. Obviously, some people have been consistently bullish that we were going to get this ETF. I still felt like it was going to be a longer process, and they've just done that those Wells notices against MetaMask, and they were facing the SEC was facing the lawsuit from Consensus. So I thought this was going to be another few months, but seemingly this has all been pushed through, and everyone's now pro crypto.
I mean, what a ludicrous week. I mean, ludicrous. Watching everybody spin their heads around this complete sea change, but it's clear that they're scared of Donald Trump. It was as simple as that. And before you know it, the hand was waved and everything happened. And then everybody's been scrambling to catch up with what the hell this even means. Now, the bill, we don't know what final format and what it's actually going to mean and, how good it is, but it's just showing that we can move forwards, or the US can move forwards, and none of us live in the US, but it's a big deal. And the ETF, what is interesting to me, we all knew it was going to happen, but now it's happened. I'm really interested to see what narrative BlackRock put around it. What is the narrative of ETH? Because ETH kind of lost its narrative in this cycle for those of us who've been around. We kind of know what it is, but it wasn't winning the narrative game. But they're going to reframe all of this for the public. And it can't be, it's another cryptocurrency, because that's not going to sell.
Yeah.
Because people say, we've got Bitcoin. So they're going to have to sell a vision for this thing that you're starting to see Van Eck with their video showing. They did a great video yesterday.
Enter the ether, yeah.
Enter the ether, yeah. I don't know. Ovi, what do you think?
Let me put it this way. Think back to the first time you knew about Bitcoin and you got your head around Bitcoin. And, back then, and this is probably a few years ago for many people, you just kind of thought of it as like this is an inflation-proof, like distributed ledger, and I can move money around and pay people overseas and all that kind of stuff, right? Then think about the first time you heard about ETH and this idea of programmable money and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, I don't really get my head around it. But then think about when you finally started using Ethereum and using it, whether it's to buy NFTs or DeFi or whatever it is. And then you have that moment where it just clicks for you. It's like, oh, I get it now. I get what smart contract is. I get what it means for the money to be programmable. And I understand how I, as a user or consumer or person, would use Ethereum for many more things than I can use Bitcoin for, right? And we've all had that an awakening because we've been around and been crypto native for a while. But now think about the 99% of Wall Street that hasn't yet had that awakening. The people who've never used Ethereum before, to do anything other than maybe just buy it in their, on their Robinhood account or whatever it is. People who have never actually used it before, once people start using it, and it's quite clear to me that like Larry Fink gets it and BlackRock gets it, and they have this tokenized fund as well on Ethereum as well. Like they obviously get it, and they have a team that gets it and understands it and has explained it to him, and he's probably had a go with it, and they've got the concept there and ready. So it's just a case of how you then pitch that concept to the rest of Wall Street, to the rest of your potential ETF buyers, in a way that's understandable without someone having to have sat in the trenches for a few weeks or months to get it. But I do think that message will eventually be delivered and people will understand it. But right now, to the average Wall Street person, you tell them about Bitcoin and you ask them about ETH, and they'll just tell you it's like another crypto. That's all they can really tell you. They won't be able to explain it much further. And that for me is the most bullish thing about this ETH ETF, because it's going to result in more people discovering what Ethereum really is, and then understanding that, all these other chains and tokens and stuff actually have some kind of use case, and they're not just, not all of them are just complete vaporware, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Lightly said.
I think you make a good point, because even the Bloomberg analysts, they're predicting 10 to 15%. The ETFs will have 10 to 15% of the AUM of the Bitcoin ETFs, but they have been pretty disparaging kind of during this process about the demand, institutional demand for ETH, which I thought has been interesting. I do think there's a story to be told. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think the most obvious one is also what you said, is Larry Fink was on CNBC months ago saying we're going to tokenize everything.
Tokenize the world is the message, I think.
Right. And I think this needed this narrative. Like we've been saying this for a while now, is that ultrasound money was getting a little bit questioned because it'd gone back inflationary. The security was being questioned to a certain extent by the L2s, and Solana was winning the speed and usability. But now it has this back. It has this sort of institutional stamp of approval. I do think you're going to see a lot of Wall Street now come in and think they can experiment with it. I think you could really. They've stayed away largely from crypto because it hasn't had that regulatory clarity, and I think that is about to change. So
yeah,
I think this is a very, very big deal.
I think you're raising a key point. Is look, all of us who've been in the financial system know that every single bank and asset management firm is working on this. I mean, Goldman's had a team since 2015. So what they wanted was the regulatory clarity, which is what Fink has forced through.
Yeah.
So the explosion of innovation that's about to happen from the finance system itself, I think, is the shock. It's not going to come from NFTs and all of the stuff that we all do. It's going to come straight from the heart of the financial system. And before you know it, they're tokenizing everything, as Larry said, and they've all been desperate for this. Wall Street will have lobbied for this because it saves so much money. It's like, I keep explaining a story to everybody that I think is super valuable for people to understand. There's a friend of mine was running fixed income, currencies, commodities, and treasury at National Australia Bank. And he's just retired. And I'm like, well, what have you been up to last few years? He goes, I've been building stable coins. I'm like, why? He goes, yeah, in euros, in Aussie dollar stable coins, euro, Aussie, euro US, euro whatever, Canadian, UK. I'm like, why? He's like, nobody realizes. I think it's next week. Fucking US goes T+1 equity settlement.
Wow.
FX markets are T+2.
Yeah.
Australia is T+3 because of the time zone. He's like, we're going to have to give tens of billions of dollars to our brokers to settle trades. And that takes from our regulatory capital, and they'll offer us 0 interest rates on it. So we're forced to use stable coins. I'm like, oh, of course. That's a massive use case. I think Canada goes to T+1, and I think, I don't know, the UK and Europe are as well. So that's a big deal, just simply from that.
Yeah, I mean, the use cases seem so obvious, don't they? Like, there's so many of these things where it makes it more efficient. And as you said, they've all been building, some of them in stealth, but they've all been just waiting for that clarity. I think we should touch upon what you said right at the start, which is what really happened here was Trump interestingly met his NFT holders. Trump did an NFT drop, or a series of NFT drops last year, and he had a meeting with them. I think it was in the evening after like his hush money trial, one of the days of that trial, and he seemed to put forward a populist view around crypto. Basically, a lot of people are for it, which means I'm for it. And then over the last 2 weeks, you have seen a series of seemingly huge roadblocks in the way of crypto acceptance just fall away. And you're getting bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate for crypto. Biden seemingly is also softening his approach. He initially said that he would veto it, and then he didn't. Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, came out with like a final flurry of you shouldn't push this through. And if you actually looked, the ETHF, he didn't get to vote on it. It was decided by a different part of the SEC, so he was just bypassed in all of this. What do you think about this? That is just a crazy change. But crypto is, I think the Fed thinks, they came out yesterday and said 7 or 8% of US uses it. There was Nova Gratz who went on TV 2 weeks ago and said, to be against crypto is essentially to be against dogs, because there are more crypto owners than there are dog owners in the US, and it's becoming a populist, thing.
Well, somebody said, "Good luck, Elizabeth Warren, in building an anti-crypto army. You're going up against millions of people who are motivated by their own future, the financial future, and they understand the power of memes." Like, that is very difficult to go up against.
Yeah.
And Trump saw that. And I think the Democrats are learning very fast that, there's 110 million Coinbase accounts, of which, I don't know what's active now, call it 10, 15 million are active, but in the height of the bull market by next year, it'll be 40 million plus. You are not going to piss off those people and tell them they can't have a financial future and win an election. Zero chance.
It's the money as well, isn't it? Like, I think SBF was one of the largest donors to the Democrat Party, if not the largest, a few years ago. So I'm sure there's we're basically we are back to all-time highs basically on Bitcoin, etc. So there's a lot of crypto wealth out there, and I'm sure that wealth is being put to some sort of good use within politics right now to sort of turn these people's heads.
So over here's a question for you. Back on the Isle of Mud, where you happen to reside, the change of government.
Yeah.
Right? Because Sunak was obviously very pro-crypto in many respects. What does that mean? Because I've always held the candle that the UK will figure this out because it's a big opportunity for the UK as a financial market. How do you see the politics here playing in the UK?
Yeah, it's a mixed one, because he came out, I think it was probably almost 2 years ago, saying we're going to make the UK a crypto hub, the crypto center of the world and all this kind of stuff. And all they really did since then and now is created some clearer regulation on crypto, which is fine. Like, a lot of crypto now falls under financial promotions, and you have to have various registrations and stuff, and to be able to have offerings and promotions and all that kind of stuff. So there's much clearer regulation here than there is in the US, where you know what's right, you know what's wrong, you know what you can do and what you can't do. But that's kind of it. Like, I was expecting, maybe there's going to be like some tax breaks for investing in UK crypto startups, or investment schemes, or just pushing it as a sector and pushing innovation. But there hasn't really been any of that, and
people can't buy it. You still can't buy it. If you go to your Lansdowne Hargreaves account, you can't buy crypto. You can't. The banks won't deal with it. I mean,
yeah, the banks have become super cautious on it because of all the scams and fraud and stuff, and because of the new FinProm regulation, a lot of crypto brokers no longer operate in the UK. So you really have a choice of I believe just Coinbase or Gemini, maybe a couple of others, and it's not as easy to buy here as it is in other places. And there's no real pushing of it by the government in terms of driving innovation either, which is kind of the main thing that I expected. So, and there's been a lot of talk about CBDCs on the other hand. So it's not really been on the face of it. It's yes, Rishi's pro crypto, but the results of it haven't really shown that, in my opinion.
What's Starmer like? Is he pro, anti, or
There's
nowhere?
not really that much information on it, actually. There's really not that much information. And I think they've held back from declaring a specific stance on it, I would say. It doesn't seem to be as hotly contested here as much as it is in the US. Like, I don't think it's going to play a big role in the UK election by any means at all. I would love to see the stats on the percentage of the population that use crypto here versus the US and versus other places, but it feels like to me it's not as high. But that being said, there's a ton of crypto startups in this country as well that do pretty well. So I don't know. I think it's nowhere near as big a it's nowhere near going to play as big a role in this election as it will in the US. And it's not very clear who would be better for crypto, whether it be, Rishi or Keir.
I think one useful thing, I'll just give a background on what crypto's like in Cayman, and then I think you can do the same, Michael, for Lisbon, because a lot of people want to know this stuff. Just a quick flip. For us in Cayman, we have, because of all of the funds are here and all of the foundations, we have great infrastructure, regulatory clarity, everything else. The only issue is the banks. The banks don't like it. I've never even brought crypto money back in. But the issue is, because Cayman is always under such a massive spotlight for anti-money laundering and KYC, AML, taxation stuff, which is fine. The banks don't know how to KYC on-chain transactions. So they can't say, or AML, really. It's like they're trying to figure out, where did your money come from? Why did you send out $100 and it's come back as $1 billion? What have you been doing that's wrong? Well, I've been trading monkeys online. They don't get that. And if you say, well, here's my proof of transaction history, they're like, we don't understand any of this. So that's the only issue for us here. Other than that, it's very pro. What's it like in Lisbon? I know a bunch of people have gone to Portugal, Michael.
Yeah. Portugal was quite a strange one in that it attracted a lot of crypto.
We don't. Also, we don't have taxes here, obviously, so we don't have to do. It's actually more than the joke I always have with you guys. It's such a difference not having to record every transaction.
Right.
It just literally doesn't matter. It makes such a huge difference to your mental state of not having to think through every transaction. How do I do it? How do I save for the thing? It's not the not paying taxes issue. It's actually just that.
The headache is a real thing.
Going through it right now. It's pretty brutal.
So they have got software that kind of helps it. They're like token tax or Coinly, which are relatively decent, but it is still relatively painful. Portugal was weird in that it attracted a lot of people for crypto because it wasn't that like Cayman, where it was like zero tax and had clear rules. They just hadn't really updated the laws to deal with. So it was just slow, which is kind of South Europe. Like it's just kind of we're well behind. Then last year they did introduce crypto regulation, particularly around tax, and it kind of mimics what Germany's done. So there's zero tax on if you hold crypto for over a year, but there's a short-term capital gains tax, which is around 28%. So that's been the main change. In terms of what Europe is doing, I think both Europe and the UK have they thought that the best move was to come out with very clear regulation, but the regulation has been relatively strict. And in the UK, it's been particularly strict against promotions, which has meant a lot of different institutions have left. Like a lot of different exchanges have left the UK or crypto-focused businesses. In Europe, they're really taking this MiCA, which is the European-wide regulation. It's gonna be implemented in different ways in different countries, or at least over a longer time over different countries. But it's going against self-custody. That's where they're kind of coming down hard on it. So like if you have big transactions over a certain level, or if you have unnamed wallets, so for all this AML and KYC stuff, they're really saying, yeah, you can have your own crypto wallet, but like if you make a transfer over X and we don't know who that's going to, then that's not allowed, or you're gonna have to have special reporting around it. So that's where they're coming down. The US obviously just hasn't had any real regulation. This is like the situation
like Portugal in the past, I guess.
Yeah, they thought that they could deal with it with the SEC, and this is what Gensler's position has been. And now seemingly it's moving more towards commodity regulation, but it still feels like they actually need specific crypto regulation to me. Like they need specific regulation. There was a stablecoin bill that's been attempted, but like they need regulation across a range of different things around crypto, which is what the UK and Europe have been. I think the UK and Europe thought that by doing that they'd attract people, but because it's been so strict, like Dubai and Singapore and all these other places have been able to essentially attract a lot more.
Switzerland's done a good job.
Switzerland's done a good job. Yes, Switzerland's always been very, very big for crypto. It's also low tax and has a lot of different like business benefits for being there. So yeah, I think the UK has missed a trick, if I'm honest. Like I've been surprised that they said they would come out and be very pro crypto, but they've really just created regulation, as Obi said, but they haven't really gone, right, we're going to Singapore this and try and win as much business as we can. Because the UK, the UK is essentially just a financial services hub. Like we don't really import or like we're not really a big exporter of that many goods apart from financial services. Like we need to be at the center of crypto. Like the UK, and I speak that as someone who's British, not somebody who lives there, but like they need to be ahead of that. I'm very, very surprised they haven't really led into it. Just be like, we're just going to dominate this, because it does feel like financial innovation is where they need to be number one. If they're not going to be in like other things, tech or
my working thesis is they will take the opportunity, but the governments have been too weak. I mean, ever since Brexit, it's just been a succession of governments because the country's very divided and it can't hold together a cohesive narrative of, okay, if you've decided to leave Europe, then you need a cohesive narrative and vision to lead. It's just completely failed to do that. And in which case you can't capture these opportunities. I mean, as you guys rightly say, it's a massive opportunity. The UK did it with the FX market, the Eurodollar market, and the OTC derivative market. These are the three biggest markets in world history. And here's another one that's going to be $100 trillion market. It's on a plate. It's the same playbook that they did. If the US is going to fuck this up, we'll take it and we'll be the global center. And they're fumbling the ball because they're arguing about politics.
Yeah, that's it, 100%. Like this is a massive opportunity there, and I think it's being missed. Hopefully Labour, who looks likely to win the election, come in and realize that as well, because to me it just seems like a massively missed trick. Like this is built for the City of London. This is built for all the hedge funds, all the asset managers, all the wealth that's in London is all around financial services. So why they're not at the front of this just seems madness to me.
I've got a quick question for Raoul before he has to shoot off, but we just spoke about all this bullishness of ETH and the ETFs and TradFi and BlackRock and Larry, etc. Why do you think ETH is still at 3,700 right now and not at like 5K or even 4K or even higher?
I saw your tweets on this and it made me think about it. We are all fully invested in the space. So the only capital is rotating from Bitcoin or Sol into ETH. We've seen a bit of that. I think that will continue. I was, by pure luck, I've been following the ETH Bitcoin cross for a while, and I posted, we got these new kind of trade idea templates on the Real Vision platform. They're just in beta test right now. And I tested one out on Saturday and put my whole thesis about the ETH Bitcoin cross, and it's exploded higher. So, I mean, that was pure luck. But I think that there's no new capital coming into the space right now. Now, if we think of it in terms of broader macro picture, the business cycle is only just picking up. Earnings are just picking up for companies. So we're not flush with cash in the real economy. Yes, some stocks have gone up and crypto's gone up, but not all crypto either, as we know. There's been quite a decent amount of divergence as there is over the crypto spring. So it is going to have to come from the ETF. And then it'll be all-time highs is going to be the driver. In fact, all you need actually is Bitcoin to hit all-time highs, then Sol will go, ETH will go. I think that brings NFTs alive. It brings alt season. It recycles capital. It brings those 80 million dead Coinbase accounts back into activity. That whole great cycle that happens in crypto summer and crypto autumn is yet to play out. I mean, don't forget, we're still basically in the middle of the pandemic when we go back to the last cycle. We're not quite We hadn't really started anything yet. Bitcoin was just breaking 10,000 after having consolidated. So I think the most overused phrase in crypto is we're so early, but we're early in the cycle. So yeah, we just need fresh capital. Liquidity, there was a liquidity withdrawal I think we talked about it last week because of the tax stuff. We'll see liquidity starting to come back in. Yellen should normally inject about 250 billion of liquidity. Now she's had the tax receipts in. Before you know it, now there's less QT, liquidity comes in, it all starts happening. So patience, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with that.
I think so. I think it'll all play out, and I think ETH will outperform Bitcoin. Solana outperforms ETH. The risk curve works in the normal way, and there'll be whatever the bonkers side looks like. It'll be the memes. This side will be the stupid, crazy end of the market this time around. The NFTs were last time around, and it'll just function normally as a risk curve. I think we're very close to that moment. Super close.
Yep.
Now I need to run, guys. So
yeah,
have a fab weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for hopping on again.
Yeah, no, I'm going to try and do this as often as possible because I just love it because it's, I can't speak to my wife about crypto. I can't speak to, it's just good to be able to chat to you guys. I don't get to see you enough, but we can just talk crypto, and it's just, and a bit of macro as well, because this is our wheelhouse. So I love it. So I'll be here as often as possible just to annoy you all.
Brilliant.
Well, it's awesome to have you. Yeah, you can catch the second half of the show maybe later.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do. No question.
Yeah.
All right, gang.
All right.
Good to see you all.
Bye. Good one.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
So yeah, I think you asked a good question there. Like, it's been slightly strange. We've seen this massive rally on when ETF first got announced, or at least that it was going to be likely, and then since it actually got approved, it's slightly stagnant. It's difficult to say that because I think you had this huge left translated move. It moved basically 30% in 2 days, and then kind of retraced slightly, so it makes it seem as though it's not really moving as high. But I think it's just really good for crypto, right? Like last week, or even in the weeks before, it felt like Solana had a good narrative, Bitcoin had a good narrative, and ETH is still searching for it. Now it feels like it's got it back, and it's got it back with a strong one, particularly like this institutionalized version of, right, we're going to tokenize everything, and that feels like that could sustain ETH. And I just think crypto works best when these three majors all have a strong narrative, rather than when like people are dunking on each other. I think this now paints a picture where I think everything can go higher. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I just think and obviously I'm biased because I'm biased to be long crypto right now, but I just really think we've had some of the most bullish headlines I've potentially ever seen in crypto. I mean, a random 180 and spot shock turnaround for the ETH ETF, but then some clear movement like in US politics and the US view on crypto, and the headlines that were coming out were just like headlines I've never seen before. Like Biden administration, like, will not veto FIT 21, but will look to find a appropriate way to regulate digital assets. Like, like very conducive headlines to crypto, and it's purely election driven. So, the election momentum is only going to pick up more steam as we get further into this year, into November. And it's become abundantly clear that it's going to be one of the major things, aspects of this election, especially for us, it's going to be even more amplified because we're always in crypto every single day. So just the chain of events we've had in the last few days since we last did this show has changed dramatically. And I just think it's extremely, extremely bullish. And I don't know, like, I'm also thinking, why aren't things, that much higher? Like, what's going on here? And maybe that's just because we haven't yet had like the mainstream media talking about this. And Raoul's absolutely right. It is just us moving from Bitcoin to Sol to ETH, but we haven't had that big capital inflow yet. But I think it will come, because I just think crypto as a topic is going to be very important over the next few months. And if the US starts to legitimize it, it can only bring in more users. It can only bring in more capital. It will allow people, institutions, to invest in it under clear regulatory guidelines, which don't exist right now in the US, right? So these are all like massive, massive things, potential structural changes that I think are extremely bullish, but they do take a long time to play out. And they do take a long time for people to become familiar with it and realize what it really means. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, I'm feeling very, I'm feeling max bullish, but at the same time, I'm definitely selling stuff as it goes higher. So
I know what you mean in that in some ways, I think this is even bigger than the Bitcoin ETF because it like when I started seeing these headlines, it was like, right, the US is suddenly about to change its policy around crypto. And that's been such a hindrance for a lot of people in crypto, particularly not just around Bitcoin, but broader altcoins. You know, this uncertainty has not helped. It's really not helped in terms of that financial innovation that we were talking about, getting more institutions involved. So with ETH now basically a commodity, it now has a path for a bunch of different things going down that route as well, at least some regulatory clarity over that. And I think that's really, really good for crypto. So I was max bullish too. I think, you know, Bitcoin did hit 71.5 roughly. ETH just broke through its local high. Solana went up to like 190 area. I think there was just some technical resistance there on like Bitcoin towards all-time high. Like it's hit that 71 area, I think 4 times or 5 times now, and then kind of dip back. I think for ETH, the reason why it sold off slightly was probably just because the ETF is not coming for another couple of months. So there's a slight delay versus when Bitcoin ones were approved, it was a week, whereas these look like they're probably going to be, you know, a little bit longer than that. And the other thing is, people remember from the Bitcoin ETF that, you know, Grayscale has got billions of dollars worth of ETH. I think close just over 10 billion worth of ETH, and that's been trading at a massive discount in their trust. So people will also assume there's going to be a decent amount of Grayscale selling there. But for me, I just thought this was massively bullish. Like I think you can really start to even revise up near-term targets here because I think I just don't see why you'd be bearish when you're going into an election where everyone is now going to try and be as pro crypto, or at least change their tone around crypto. And it's not like we haven't had zero inflows. I think we've had 9 straight days of inflows on the Bitcoin ETF. Nearly, I think it's 1.75 billion worth over 9 days. So I think this is very, very bullish for broader crypto, and this is also a macro backdrop where Nvidia just smashed earnings. Nasdaq, S&P all hit all-time highs. Gold didn't have a great week, but it's definitely been the sort of environment where I think it's ready to explode now. That was a very, very big change for people who are not following crypto day in, day out. This was probably one of the biggest weeks I think in that I've had in my crypto career in terms of big changes that could happen. The idea that they've come in and about face change their policy around the ETH, and that provides a clarity around a bunch of different tokens that could really change things. There was talk this week, you know, about them creating baskets of meme coins, ETFs around meme coins as well. Like, you could have a 1980s style moment here where, with this clarity, Wall Street just comes in and they just go crazy with this space.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, meme coins have become such a big part of everything right now, and something like Doge has existed for a long time. I do think it's ETFs are retail products, right? So I do think retail want exposure to them. Like the first ETF provider to have a meme coin ETF will probably do really well. You know, it would probably, like, imagine a, I don't know, Doge ETF. Like, it would do pretty well. People would buy it. People would buy meme ETFs just like they buy meme stocks, right? So I think for ETF issuers, it would be a good product that would make money for them. It would always be good for current meme coins, but it would be super volatile instruments, and you'd have to really pick like the multi-billion-dollar market cap memes and not just random memes. And maybe a meme coin index is the right way to do it. You pick like the top 5 or something like Doge, Pepe, WIF, SHIB.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. Like that, and that's actually what we saw. So this week the two main sectors which moved after this news was the RWA space. That's the real world asset space, the space that's trying to tokenize assets and put them on chain. There's a number of different coins in that space. The biggest is probably Ondo, which has had links to BlackRock, and then there's been a few others like Pendle and a few other smaller ones. So that space in terms of altcoins moved very, very quickly, which I thought made a lot of sense. This now leads to the ability for tokenization of things on ETH very easily. And then the second space again was meme coins. You had Pepe, which is a meme coin which was formed last year around the Pepe meme. We spoke about it last week. That hit an all-time high. Actually entered the top 20 in terms of coins. Broke through 6 billion market cap, because I think people think that if ETH, and this is a meme coin on ETH, if ETH is now a commodity, meme coins themselves are also the most obvious to be commodities, because they're not really built around a team doing work, but it's built around a meme. So it creates an easy path for those things to be potentially packaged up and sold in different ways. So yeah, those two sectors I am very medium term bullish on. I think those trends are here to stay. ETH meme coins, I think, could continue to rally for a while here, just because people get very, very bullish on the idea that ETH is now a clean space to gamble on. And I think the second is this tokenization, because I think all you're going to hear about for the next few months is a bunch of different big financial institutions coming in and saying, "Hey, we're gonna open up a tokenization office on ETH. We're gonna do this on L2, we're gonna do this on L1, and we're gonna experiment, and we're gonna do a ton of different things." So I think those two sectors are interesting in the medium term. Is there anything else you picked up on, or like what do you think about those two sectors? What are you looking at in those?
Well, I was going to suggest, should we move on to the questions?
Yeah,
and go through some of the questions, but with the last 20 minutes of the show. All right, I'll pull them up. So first question is, this is a good question, because I think this is quite hotly debated. This is from Bill. What do you think this will do to Solana? And I'm guessing this is the ETH ETF. What's the impact on Solana?
Short-term impact is it lost attention, because I think ETH won it back. But this is what I said before. I think it's really healthy that now they all have their own narratives. Very, very quickly, the tone, the conversation has shifted to, right, is a Solana ETF coming, because of its similarities to ETH in many ways, like an ICO in a similar way. And you saw Standard Chartered, I think, came out today and said they think that you're going to see a Ripple and a Solana ETF next year. Now, one of the reasons why the ETH ETF was approved was because it had a futures ETF before that, and they felt comfortable in the correlation between the price of the futures and the spot prices, that they were happy to approve the spot ETF. So I think for Solana to be accepted, you'll have to see a futures ETF next. So I think we could very imminently see filings to try and push through a Solana futures ETF, or at least those questions will be asked in the next few weeks. Like, we could see that happen in to be honest, in days, because I think people will want to be the first to try and go after a futures ETF there. To me, it's probably still at least a year away before you go down that route. But I think people are still going to degen on Solana. Like, a lot of the stuff that's been going on, the fact that it's fast and cheap, and those things don't go away. It probably loses out on the real world asset tokenization trend slightly. Jupiter, which is one of the main dexes, came out this week with a big initiative around the fact that they were going to try and tokenize as many assets as possible, with a number of different firms, mainly based in Asia, to be fair. But I think you'll see the big US financial institutions probably choose to tokenize on ETH here. And I think that is a big trend for them. But stablecoin transfers, all that sort of stuff, still, I think, will be very, very strong on Solana, and the volumes are still very, very strong. So I think if we're still in a world where, where Raoul says, like, we have to sell one thing to buy another, then that's, people have sold Solana to buy ETH this week. But I think what we're talking about is this is a massive shift to crypto that we'll see inflows for all different narratives now, and I think that probably pushes everything higher in my opinion. So yeah, I'm kind of very bullish on a pullback on Solana here.
I think the other thing to note is it looks like the reason why this is now being approved, which maybe was a reason why it was going to get rejected, is that ETH will now be viewed as a commodity rather than as a security. And it sounded like from the headlines and the murmurings before last week, the SEC was, poised to reject the ETF on the grounds that ETH was a security. And now it seems like with talk of it being regulated by the CFTC, it can maybe be classed as a commodity. And that I think is a very bullish thing for all altcoins. As you said, like a similar nature in which a lot of them were launched. It materially weakens the SEC's argument of things being securities, I think, which I think is bullish for Solana and lots of other altcoins as well. So for me, I actually think while ETH may have the attention right now and maybe retains the retention going over the next few weeks, I do think this is the thing that can kind of kick off an alt season and kick off Bitcoin actually losing some of its dominance against other altcoins. And I would think Solana would be the front runner outside the Bitcoin ETH group.
It's a good point. I'm more worried on
yeah.
Bitcoin potentially losing its focus, losing the spotlight here than maybe Solana, because this feels like the sort of thing where there is no second best. It's suddenly just been called into question, and like you said, this could be an alternative.
I think Bitcoin could, and the entire Bitcoin ecosystem, including ordinals, I think it could really struggle for the rest of this year. I think you could see it get, I think it could get pushed back to where it was in 2021, because the main driver for Bitcoin throughout this entire year has been ETS really, and thus the Bitcoin ecosystem stuff has done pretty well. But if you now have ETH in the picture, and then you have other altcoins and stuff, and people start discovering everything else again, it's almost like you're having like two rediscoveries of crypto, like where all the crypto natives know what there is, and now all the normies and TradFi are discovering Bitcoin, then discovering the next thing, and they were just repeating the same kind of like path of motion that we've seen in it over the last few years. But I really think personally Bitcoin could really struggle to maintain attention once this ETH ETF gets approved. Now that does depend on inflows and stuff, but like BlackRock very clearly have a like for ETH here, and it feels like that may be one of the things that they end up pushing. So
yeah, I'm bullish on all three, but I do think Bitcoin dominance could come down. I agree with that. I think Bitcoin still will do very, very well, but I can see now a world where before I thought Bitcoin dominance could head to very easily to 60% plus. I think that's going to be a much more difficult pitch.
Yeah. All right, next question. Assuming Grayscale keeps their trust at a 2.5% management fee, what do you think on a similar bolt for the exit impact on the market shortly after going live? I think ETHE, which is the Grayscale ticker, has about $8.6 billion in AUM. So what are your thoughts on seeing a repeat of just Grayscale selling?
The discount on the ETH ETF was even bigger, right? People have been in that trade. They really hit the jackpot. You could have bought it at a I think a 30+% discount, even imminently before we heard about the news that it was going to get accepted. So that was a big shift. I think you're going to see a lot of outflows. I think that's something everyone will be more aware of. And I also think the inflows may not be as soon as the ETH, as Bitcoin, like the massive inflows. Just going on what happened in Asia. But I think that's just temporary, right? For me, that probably clears. A lot of this is like it will move into a different. It will move into the BlackRock trust, whatever it ends up being called, or the Fidelity one. So I think you'll just see some leaving. But I can imagine you'll see some bad headlines at the start, just in the same way you did after the Bitcoin ETF. Like Grayscale sent 1 billion ETH to Coinbase. You're like, oh god, this could get a little bit harsh. I think people are probably be a little bit jaded about it. So that's part of the reason I thought we sold off. Is just that people remember that, and they don't necessarily want to be the person buying, because I think Bitcoin hit 69K on the first day that it got launched, right? The Bitcoin ETF, and then it promptly dumped down to 58K within, I think, like 4 or 5 days. And I think very similarly we could see something here.
I think remember the Bitcoin ETF really was like a 6 to 7 month process. Like we heard BlackRock had applied for it in May or June of last year, almost a year ago. So it was a very telegraphed thing that was around for a long time. And I think some people gained confidence pretty early that it was going to happen. And so I think the size of the GBTC versus Bitcoin trade and capturing the differential, I think that the size of that basis trade on Bitcoin was a lot larger than it is on ETH right now, because I think people had more confidence that the Bitcoin ETF was going to get approved, and actually people didn't think the ETH ETF was going to get approved. So when you had that, when you had the approval, I just think there was a ton of people unwinding that trade. I don't have the numbers, but I would suspect that the gross value of that trade on ETH, on the Grayscale ETH Trust versus spot ETH is, or versus ETH perps, is much smaller than it was on Bitcoin. So I think in terms of the unwind effect, you may not have as much ETH for sale.
It's a good point.
Yeah,
there may be less short-term money. Essentially, there's fewer hedge funds doing that trade, and it's probably more institutional funds that might just directly switch. Yeah, that's a good point.
At the same time, to your point, like I think if people are switching because there's a 2.5% management fee, well, they probably just move to something that's cheaper. It's not like that. It's not a net. It's not a net outflow. It's actually a net wash. So that doesn't really have a big impact. But yeah, those are the thoughts there. All right, next question. This is from Sandy. Do you guys believe the ETFs are manipulating the Bitcoin market?
There's always talk about manipulation. What I do think is that the big issuers, Fidelity and BlackRock, they have trillions of dollars of AUM. They could very easily, report outflows in one fund for a series of days, and then buy the dip in one of their other funds on like the 5th or 6th day. Like they have so many different funds, particularly active managed funds, that they can kind of do what they like with. I do think there's a lot of power there for market manipulation. I'm not saying they're doing it, but there's no oversight there. And a lot of people, the whole market is following what happens with those funds. You see big flows happen directly after the daily funds are reported. So clearly there is trading happening directly on the back of that number. And I think that number is easy to manipulate. Like economic data, when it comes out, it's kept under wraps. This is essentially like they know about that figure before it comes out. So I'm not saying that they can't, they are, but they could very, very easily, in my opinion. Or at least there's room for them to manipulate.
Yeah, I just think like people out there have these numbers before they're released to the market, right? And they have that information before it gets released to the market. And even at BlackRock, who see the most ETF inflows, their sales teams might be like, okay, next week's going to be a big week. Like we're expecting people to be spoken to all our top clients and our biggest money managers. We're expecting some big numbers in this week, and that then gives BlackRock that information and allows them to position ahead of that, right? So whether that's necessarily manipulating the market or not, I don't know if it is, but it's such a tiny market compared to the rest of. You have TradFi sized institutions with literally trillions of dollars under management, like BlackRock, who are acting and participating in a crypto-sized market, which is tiny. Like the entire market cap crypto is like the size of Amazon or wherever it is, right? So it's definitely ripe to manipulation, I think. All right, this is from Sri from the Real Vision website. I believe all these questions are actually from the Real Vision website. If you had some dry powder on hand, would you recommend putting it in ETH or in Sol at this point?
I mean, right now, I think you saw a 30% move or 25% move in Sol ETH. I think short term you could probably see a reversal of that slightly. I last week, if you asked me that question, I would have 100% said Sol, and I would have lost 30% on that trade. But rightly, like they all now have strong narratives. So for me, I feel like the good thing about this is that you can just focus on the three majors. Like they're all going to have strong narratives here. So I don't think you need to go after anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, this one's from Alex. Given we're so early and Bitcoin dominance is still so strong, is there any point in having anything other than memes in our DGen bag?
I think it's super bullish for memes. That's the other thing I would own. Like I think Pepe. I honestly think Pepe could go up another 3 or 4x here. So I'm very, very bullish on ETH memes right this second. Just because I think they've been hurt for a while and unloved, and I think you've seen huge moves in them. But Pepe for me again, I just think could continue to go. NFTs is still a little bit difficult. I do think that we're still not at this point in the cycle where they go parabolic, but they could very, very easily. But yeah, for now, my DGM bag is mainly meme coins.
All right, what do you think of Jim Bianco's view that ETS may disincentivize the ecosystem supporting direct token holding, ultimately lead to lower token values?
I don't know. He's had some like slightly bearish takes on crypto recently. I would agree, as in like on the ETFs impact on crypto. I think he's basically saying that ETF holders are not real crypto holders, and that they've probably got they're less believers. They'll sell more easily. They're not really involved in the ecosystem. I think there is some truth in that, particularly for ETH, like you said. Like people need to feel ETH to really know why it's so useful. Only an ETF, I think, kind of it's not like gold. You know, ETH isn't like gold. It's digital money, so you should be using it. I think for ETH and Solana that there's a stronger case for that than Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is well suited to an ETF in that it does have a payments network, but it's mainly by L2s. But people are generally use it as a store of wealth. So I think it is well suited. So I think different horses for different courses there.
All right. This question is from On-Chain Metrics from our YouTube channel. Isn't this the perfect environment for an ETH meme coin season? What do you think about that? I think we've kind of half answered it a little bit with your thoughts on Pepe and stuff, but
this week Pepe hit all-time high. Mog, which is one of the biggest coins, is near all-time high. You had a coin called Turbo, which is now all-time high. Like things have moved. So yes, when the news first came out, the first thing I snap bought was Pepe. And I think you similarly have positions in some of the other ones, but I think we're probably midway through it to a certain extent, like the short-term massive gains. Like all of these things hit all-time high, having been unloved for a while. So you may have missed some of the trade that you could wait maybe for a little bit of a pullback, I think. But yeah, I do like ETH coins. I do think you'll see a story here where they are very accepted given ETH is a commodity.
It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you do believe ETH is going to have the legs to move to 5K and beyond, where does that put something like a Pepe? Where does that put something like a Pepe, or where does it put something like a Mog? And I think meme coins have shown that they are really the best beta for the underlying chains. Like when Solana rallies, you saw the crazy price action on WIF or on Bonk or all plethora of Solana coins, and we're now seeing that proven once again for ETH. Like Pepe has moved a ton, Mog has moved a ton, Trump's moved a ton, Turbo just moved a ton today. So it makes it interesting, because if you do think ETH goes to 5K and beyond, where does that put something like Pepe? Where does that put something like Mog? Where does it put all these different coins? And that's the thing I think takes us back to SHIB Doge levels of 2021 of like these, 30, 40, $50 billion market caps.
Also, the big change, and one thing we spoke about last week was why we get so bullish on meme coins is because of listings. Coinbase has opened the floodgates since this ruling yesterday. They've gone to launch about 4 or 5 different coins. That means Coinbase is essentially back open for business on listings, and I think a bunch of US exchanges will think that too. They'll see, right, they haven't listed a bunch of different coins for this or that reason because they felt like the SEC was breathing down their neck. Kraken, Binance US, Coinbase, I forget what the other top exchanges, Gemini. These people all start to list these coins. So you'll start to see a big listing season, I think, here in the US. And that will mainly be around meme coins because they haven't been able to list them, or they've chosen not to list them because they felt as though they could be classed as securities. And I think that's a very, very bullish trend. So Coinbase starting to list everything, you could see a lot of these meme coins move.
Cool. I think that wraps up the questions that we've had. So I don't know, this time next week, gun to your head, where do you think ETH's going to be trading? A week to digest the news and move on from where we are now.
I mean, we were all very, very bullish last week. I was obviously most bullish on Bitcoin and Solana. This week they're up like 4% and ETH went up 25%. I think Bitcoin hits all-time high in the next week.
Right.
I think ETH could easily go above 4K, and I think Solana probably underperforms for a little bit longer, but I think it bounces from where it is right now. So it's 165. I think Solana probably goes above 180. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think we could see a 4-handle number on ETH this time next week. So we'll see where we are in a week's time, and hopefully we are right. But with that, I think it's time to wrap it up. So thanks everyone for tuning in to REKT Vision. You can follow us on X, OSF_REKT, REKT Mando. Make sure you're following the Real Vision account. Make sure you sign up to Real Vision Crypto. It's realvision.com/RVC. And we will see you guys next Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 4:30 p.m. British Summer Time. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Cheers.